I have to tell you, I'm really excited about tonight's guest, Dr. Michael Nagler from the Mineola School District in New York, on Long Island. I first was introduced to Dr. Nagler through a video series. It's called Mineola Grows, and it was just fantastic. And then I reached out to him because I am writing a book on gifted education, this idea that I believe that all kids should have access to a gifted experience. And so in my book, in the end, I have a chapter that's dedicated to finding inspiration in the success of others. And Mineola is a school district that I write about because they are a model district that any educator, any school, any district should follow in terms of how they help kids understand their brains and learning. I'm looking for a really great conversation tonight with the superintendent of Mineola School District, Dr. Nagler. We're going to delve into his new book. We're going to just talk about his career and talk about the future of education. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Dr. Michael Nagler to a conversation with Brian. Mike, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Super excited to be here.
I really appreciate you taking some time tonight. Hey, at the beginning of each one of my shows, I want my audience to get to know my guests. And so what I ask is for my guests to talk as much as you'd like about your personal story, your professional journey, and how you got here. And so who is Dr. Mike Nagler?
Oh, it's a complicated question. I'm one of 7 kids, born and raised in Brooklyn, New York, product of the New York City public schools. And I went to Binghamton State, Brooklyn College, and eventually got my doctorate from Columbia. But in my mind, I'm public education. I lived it. It did fantastic for me over my career in many different levels. And had you asked me 37 years ago when I started teaching in Brooklyn that I'd be sitting here chatting with you, I wouldn't believe it.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, my journey is, I've never considered myself like a super smart person, or I avail myself to opportunities, but I do think differently than most of my colleagues in that I really think kids should love to learn. And if you love to learn, you should love school.
Sure.
And I see so many kids not enjoy school, and it angers me that that's a love of learning is the greatest gift a school could give.
Sure.
And that really drives me. That's what motivates me in this job. I've been a superintendent. This is my 15th year in Mineola. I started here as an assistant principal. I was a high school principal and deputy. And my whole philosophy is, if it's good for kids, let's do it.
Yeah.
And I think we can go in so many different ways, but I'm kind of atypical about overemphasis on test scores or overemphasis on standardized assessments. I think there's a place for all those things, but it can't be what drives us.
Yeah. So let's go back just to your childhood. In your book, at the beginning of your book, and you mentioned you have your parents had 7 kids and 7 bachelor's degrees, 7 master's degrees, and like 4 doctorates. And so
Yep.
you said education was really important, obviously, but talk a little bit about your journey, maybe your siblings' journey. As you said earlier, you're not so big on, standardized tests, although they have their place. In my new book, I talk about we're much more than a score.
Mm-hmm.
So talk about your journey in terms of, were you a great student? Were you a student who struggled in some areas? Did you have a passion? What was your journey like as a student?
So I was always good with my hands. I apprenticed as a plumber. I've been in the trades on and off again my entire life.
Yeah.
I'm the sibling that fixes everything and We'll put the kitchen in for my brothers and sisters. Uh, but I also was a pretty good student. When I was interested, I was exceptional in class. When I was disengaged, I went through the motions. So in college, I was pre-med and I was a dance major. Then I think I was eventually I became a history major. I think I changed my major 4 times. And I was going to go to law school, but I really didn't do well on the LSAT. And my mother said, if you're going to live back in the house, you better have a job.
Yeah.
So she was a principal at the time, so she got me a teaching gig, and like the rest is history from there.
One of the things, I mean, I hear what you're saying in terms of, working with your hands and kind of exploring different things. And you were saying that, when you were engaged, you did well. But isn't that the case for all our kids? Shouldn't we be trying to help all of our kids find their strengths, their passion, their gifts, and what engages them?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a big believer in, public education. There are all these things we have to do.
Yeah.
And then for many of us, there's all these things we want to do, but we don't find the bridge between the two. And I think like teacher burnout, that whole concept is you're constantly doing things you're told to do, not what you want to do.
Yeah.
And it's the same for kids. I mean, I have I mentioned in the book, my son loves to learn and he hates school.
Yeah.
And I mean, he's a brilliant kid. Yeah, he's a senior now. But when he's interested in something,
Sure.
he is just it's hard to describe how phenomenal he is and how his brain thinks. Um, but my daughter, who's older, who's in college now, was very compliant. He's a little more defiant in his, I don't want to do this. She was very compliant and did everything they asked her to do, and she excelled. Um, she's at Harvard now, so she did okay. But
Sure.
they're very different kids, both high achieving, but they and you had them in the video, by the way. The one of the
Yes.
video one of the videos, the clips you had, those are my two kids.
Yep.
They look so different now. It's funny. Um, and that's what drives me. I look at my own kids. I see they're disenfranchised in school, or what they connect with and what they don't, and then I take that and I apply it to Mineola kids.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I've always said or has driven me is I've always kind of said, I asked the question, do we think it's our moral obligation to treat other people's children in the same way that we would treat our own children? Meaning, should we have the same expectations? And if if the answer to that question is yes, then we should be able to or be willing to turn over any stone, any rock, to be able to figure out how to help those children.
Yeah, I use that all the time. I mean, and you see it. I was a different teacher after I had kids. I was certainly a different leader after I had kids, because
Yeah.
all the things that frustrated me. Obviously they're not in my district; they're in the neighboring district,
Sure.
which on paper is a highly accredited, high achieving school, but they don't believe in personalization.
Yeah, and
So it's very interesting.
yeah. I think in reading and looking at a lot of the videos that you have done, looking at your interview, and you talked about this just briefly early on. Teachers comply, teachers get frustrated because they can't do what they like to do, but you've broken that mold. You have allowed teachers, I mean, through your video series, Mineola Grows, I mean, it was so innovative, and we'll get to that in a few seconds. But you have modeled this idea that it's okay to take risks. It's okay to fail. It's okay to do something a little different than what we're expected to do, and it's paid off for you.
Well, I like to think so. Yes, I love the expression "failure without defeat."
Yep.
Because I really think it captures, we all fail in life. It's a common this misnomer that you're perfect or that kids should ever expect to be perfect is ridiculous. So how do we teach kids that, failure and mistakes are a part of life, and you use those opportunities to grow and pick yourself back up and try it again. And the kids are, I don't think the kids are ever the problem with that. It's their parents that kind of fight us in a way of what of some of the beliefs we're trying to teach.
I think you're exactly spot on. And one of the things that I talk about in my book is how do you help parents understand? Like when you're teaching the growth mindset, for example, when we taught kids about the growth mindset, we opened it up to parents, and we had sessions with staff and parents to teach parents about the growth mindset. We had a book talk around Carol Dweck's book, and parents were just floored because they were like still holding on to things from when they were in school, right?
Mhm.
So they only know what they know, and so they're still operating off of this, mindset from 30 years ago, 40 years ago, when we know that the brain changes and that we can get smarter with effort and persistence. And so, how have you helped parents in that respect? I know it's a challenge, but how do you help parents kind of, understand that we are in the 21st century?
Yeah, it's multifaceted, obviously. The younger parents, or teaching in the younger grades, it's a lot easier than shifting that mindset when you get into high school. And I think a lot of it is when you start to departmentalize and put a overemphasis on content subject areas, it changes the whole dynamic of how kids interact with learning and how they interact with grades. And I could talk all night about that. But the whole notion of the video series was really to educate parents. We did a full-length documentary on implementing the first year growth mindset. That was for parents. We speak the language. We really work hard at developing a common language
Sure.
among and between all of our staffs in pre-K to 12 about what we're trying to accomplish. So, and we recognize that at each level, it's a different conversation. We just finished a high school series. I don't know if you see Mineola Grows. We just put up the high school series on emotional intelligence, and I love it. The high school students wrote it and acted in the videos.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
Having them
Um,
having them engage and own this, that's just what we want from kids. We want kids to take the wheel to their car.
yeah. And it's at the high school level, we spend a lot of time where I'm very fortunate. We have one of our administrators, Jen Machin, it was worked with Mindset Works, which is Carol Dweck's offshoot in her company, and she's really an expert on growth mindset. So she's led a lot of our charge around brain science to our little ones, and um, the concerted effort that you're not born smart. Smart is through hard work and effort, and anyone can grow their neurons.
Yeah, yeah. Jen was in the videos, right?
Yep, Jen is in the videos. She's written a lot of them. Mhm.
Yeah, when I wrote about you in my book, you made sure that I mentioned Jen, and because you said that she was huge in getting this off the ground and making sure that it worked for all kids.
Yeah, she's a driving force behind a lot of things we do. I'm fortunate. I get to sit in the big chair, so I get a lot of credit for things that I shouldn't get credit for. So I'd like to make sure that people get credit for what they do. She really is. She's a great person, and she works her tail off for us. And I think she all the work you see that's replicated around this country is the majority of it is through her mindset and how she brought us along.
Well, and I know you're being modest, but you have to have a vision, and you have to make sure that people understand why we're doing what we're doing, right? In your book, you talk about people won't care what you do unless they know why you do it, right? Like
Mhm.
that's Simon Sinek. And
Yep.
so you having that vision and helping create other leaders, because obviously you have a lot of people who are talented, and you're saying go forth. I mean, use your talents, right? And so I think that's the mark of a great leader, is not is being humble enough to be able to say, I don't have to be out in front in everything because I have other people who may be more effective or more knowledgeable in areas that I'm not.
Yeah, I think my turning point in my leadership life was when I didn't have to give every presentation. When the presentations that my principals and my central cabinet were giving were better, equal or better than the ones I could give. And we spoke the same language. It was like I cloned like 10 of me and they all look different. And that's really scaled our work here. And I'm very proud of that. I think I joke around all the time and say, I'm an idea man. That's my job. The nuts and bolts of how we do it is not what I do.
That's
It drives my people crazy, but yeah, that's
yeah. When I was a principal, I have great ideas, but my strength is not the nuts and the bolts part of it. So I truly get it. At the beginning of our show, I did that little introduction, but I have to be clear because I want to make sure people understand this. Mike was the 2020 New York State Superintendent of the Year. That's huge. That is huge.
thank you.
There's some other facts that I just want my audience to know. Your district is one of only 114 members of the nationwide in the League of Innovative Schools. And this is interesting. You were the first district on Long Island to offer a full day pre-K. How did you pull that off? That is
Well,
huge.
now it's a little easier because the UPK money is flowing through, so the money is less of a factor. We created this. It's a little odd. We created this entry level position for teachers that start in our pre-K, and it's a reduced salary to enable to afford the program, but they have first rights at the next probationary job.
Right.
So I introduced this concept. There's a level to start, and when there was an overabundance of teachers, it sounded like a great idea. Now it's getting harder and harder to find teachers. But and so that helped us afford it, and now we're able to the money flowing, so it's not that big of a deal. But that really launched the growth mindset initiative because when we had half day for everyone,
Right.
and we added all this time, and we said, well, what are we going to do with this time? And the resounding movement was, well, let's teach them about their brains. Let's teach them that they can learn anything and that they can do anything. It's through hard work. And let's teach them about their amygdala and their prefrontal cortex and what controls their emotions and their lizard brain. And you'd be amazed. I was in a class today. I was in a second grade class, and a lot of the kids recognize me from the videos. So it's like I'm the crazy uncle that goes and riles everybody up, and then I leave. But they could tell you all about their brains.
Yeah.
They're sponges, the little ones in particular. It's such a blessing to go into schools, especially if you're not having a great day as an adult,
Yeah.
and just listen to our little ones. And there's so much hope for humanity when you make visits like that.
Yeah, I loved going into pre-K and K in first grade. And one of the things that we found, which they taught us, our primary grade teachers taught the rest of the school, was that our younger kids could pick up, like you said, they're sponges. They can learn much more than we thought they could. Like we started this goal setting focus, and this was back in 2011 or 12, and we started to say we need to start setting goals. And we were at the staff meeting, and our upper grade teachers, fourth and fifth grade, they were like, our kids are too young to be setting goals. And our kindergarten teachers raised their hand and they said, au contraire, basically.
Mm-hmm.
This is what we've been doing. We've been using these goal cards to have them set social emotional goals, have them set goals around their literacy skills, math skills. These are 5, 6 years old. And so if they're able to do it, there's no excuse along the continuum from pre-K all the way up through grades 12.
Yeah, again, it's that expectation and standard we have for kids. My
Yeah.
favorite example is if you ever spoken to a 5-year-old boy, odds are they could tell you 10 dinosaurs, and they could tell you the names, and they could show you the pictures, and they can give you some characteristics about dinosaurs. We don't teach dinosaurs.
Yeah.
Dinosaurs aren't in anybody's curriculum,
And I have 5-year-old
especially
girls who could tell me
no, no.
about dinosaurs. Yeah, they can learn. We just, like you said, we have to have expectations for them.
And an interest. So they have an interest in learning about them, and they do. So it's this I get on a soapbox about choice and giving kids choice about what they do and how they learn, and in all aspects. So the content they learn, the modality, how, when, and why. I mean, we launched a new version of high school here that I'm super excited about it. We're in our second year where there are no periods. All of the subjects are in the cloud. Kids come in every day and they set their schedule. They have teachers on the floor. They can do office hours. They could do seminars. There's a whole different way.
That's amazing. I mean, that just, but think about, you're saying that, I mean, you're empowering students. That's what you're doing. I mean, you're connecting with them personally, but then you're connecting learning to their interest. And that's how we're going to get students to really find their passions, is being able to do that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm on a new kick. I kind of challenged my high school staff at convocation last week. I said, in reality, a high school diploma is a useless piece of paper. Um, if you're going to college, fine. You need to pass that. You need to have it to move on to college. But if you're not going to college, what skill did we give you? What job are you now going to do
Yeah.
that's better than a minimum wage in McDonald's? And we have to start taking a deep look at how we allocate time
Right.
and giving kids the skills and the agency to do more.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a whole cottage industry of these boot camps and these certification courses that we should be providing. We shouldn't graduate a kid and then they have to go pay to learn something to make money.
And along the way, giving them, which I call kind of superpowers, and you've talked a little bit about it, growth mindset, like, these attributes like persistent and, self-control and curiosity and optimism, all those things, thinking flexibly, all those things that, because when they, go out into the workforce, they're going to need those. They're going to have so many different jobs, from what I understand, that they're going to need to be able to be flexible and unlearn and relearn and all the other things that for us, back when I was younger, we didn't so much have those unless our parents taught them to us.
Yeah, yeah. And even then it was a different, I think our adults in education really fail to see the point of view of a kid and the world they live in compared to when we grew up.
Yeah.
Because the amount of distractions and the amount of information and the amount of um, filtered information that gets to them, we
Noise.
we
Yeah.
never had that. It was as much television as you watched, it wasn't the same thing.
No.
So, and there's a whole different skill set that kids need to really to do well in this world.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially social media. We don't teach a course about information literacy. We really need to. We really need to teach the skill to discern what's good information, what's bad.
Yeah.
What's the point of view of the person telling you something, and how do you decipher whether it's good information or not?
Yeah, I totally agree. Hey, in your book, it's called The Design Thinking Entrepreneurial Visionary Planning Leader. And you talk about this idea of ambiguity,
Mhm.
and how basically the present day leader needs to be able to, one, be visionary. And what you mean by that, and I shouldn't say what you mean, but what I got from that is you need to be able to see around corners. you need to kind of see what's coming, and sometimes we are so reactionary instead of really preparing for what's to come. And although we can't see everything, we still should actually try to plan ahead to see kind of what could be coming. Am I off base?
No, I think it's almost like a little bit. You don't have to be Nostradamus to get a lay of the land and predict that the speed and the pace of change is exponential,
Yeah,
and the speed of change in a school is almost a flat line. And how do you reconcile that the schools don't match the trajectory and the curve of change, particularly in technology? I
yeah,
mean, the example I use is if you graduated in 2020, a high school graduate, you started kindergarten the year the iPhone was created.
yeah. That's amazing.
And during that time, I think it was 2012, mobile devices eclipsed desktop devices.
Yeah,
And I think it's a seminal point in history that we miss that, information is ubiquitous. Everybody has it.
yeah, yeah,
And nobody asked the question, or some of us asked the question, well, how does that fact change the way we teach and learn? And the bigger question is, what's the purpose of school? It's not the same thing. I don't even know how you define an educated person. It used to be easy in the old days. Well, you're very learned and you read the classics and you know
no facts.
Shakespeare and you could do this and blah, blah, blah.
This is every piece of information in the history of mankind is in here.
Yeah, yeah. But we still teach content.
Yeah,
So we teach all of these things that the phone can tell us, and we miss the obvious is how do you apply knowledge to solve problems?
yeah,
And that used to be a gifted only for the gifted classes. The ability to apply what you just learned and solve a bigger problem or a local problem.
yeah.
And I think that needs to be the shift.
Exactly. Yep. Everybody needs that. You talk about artificial intelligence, and you know, just within the last 6 months to a year, we've heard about this chat GPT. And I hear some, people freaking out, like some teachers are, oh no, we can't use that because kids will be cheating. And I'm like, we have to embrace it. We have to start to think about how do we use this new technology and embrace it. And if we're going to make mistakes, it's not going to be clean, but we have to, put our heads together and say, this is here now. How are we going to use it effectively and help kids use it effectively?
Yes. I'll give you I just previewed two products that I think are really cool the way they're using it. The first product is by a company called eSpark, and they ask kids a series of questions like pick a character, pick a setting, pick a special skill. So I picked the dragon that spit water instead of fire and lived in outer space and he was purple. And after I fill in these prompts, a story is written for me about my character.
Right.
And then it's a reading comprehension. So now you read the story and they ask you questions that are rooted in the standards
Yeah.
about the story that you just created. Think about how cool that is for a
I
kid.
love that because now I'm owning this. I've helped create this, so now I'm engaged.
So that what's bad about that? It's how you use the technology. I have another company, my long-term partners, Kidoyo.
Right.
They're creating an AI that's that the teacher creates. So the teacher will come in and say, "I'm an English teacher. I'm teaching a lesson on persuasive essays. These are the four things I would like in the essay."
Right.
And then the kids upload their assignment to that specific chat GPT,
Right.
and it gives feedback. So now think about all this personalized feedback. So what the teacher did is she created a model essay that the technology is now going to grade against, give feedback against that model.
I think
And it's safe because you're not going out to the internet to do this.
right.
It's baked in the system, so it's a safe search.
There's so many opportunities for us to grab onto this and just roll with it, right? So like for teachers are overwhelmed. Think about how efficient that could be for teachers,
Mm-hmm.
and then
Yeah.
how in terms of grading and feedback. I mean, I think sometimes teachers will feel like, oh, well, I'm going to be less important. No, you need to, you're more important because you need to make sure that they know how to use this in a way that's responsible.
Yes. Yeah. And it's just like cell phones. I read all these articles about banning cell phones in schools. I mean, how ridiculous is that? To
Yeah.
me, it's so silly. You have to have these opportunities to we educate. That's what we do. Teach children the best way, the
Yeah.
proper way. Give them the skills so they can use it correctly. And that's our job.
Yeah. Hey, you're from New York. Are you a sports fan?
I am, yes.
Jets or Giants?
Well, I'm a Giant fan, but both of our teams are.
Well,
It's very hard right now, and I'm a Yankee fan also. That doesn't help.
oh, okay. Well, I just was wondering. I always hear the accent, and most of my teammates from playing basketball in college were from New York, and so some were huge Jets fans, and some were Giants fans, and then some were Yankees and some were Mets, and so it was always a great argument or great.
Is that a Dodger hat? What do you have there?
It's a Dodger hat. Yes.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
That's really a New York team. I hate to tell you, but
Well, yeah. I mean, and I'm a fake Dodger fan. Just uh, my daughter went to school in California, and so I would get all of her stuff when she would come back. So it's all good. It's all good. Um, Question about the video series before I let you go. When I was first introduced to it, I was introduced by one of my former teachers, and actually her book is right behind me. Her name is Tracy Hewlin, and she wrote a book with me, this book, but then she wrote Building Blocks for Social Emotional Learning. And she introduced me to Mineola Grows. And when she said, Brian, you have to watch this video series. I knew nothing about you at the time. And when I saw the video series, I was like, this is fascinating. This is really great. This is a much in alignment with what we did at my former school before I retired. And you all just put it in a video series. And then I started to research a little bit more. And then I realized you were the superintendent, but you were the person who was, one of the stars of the video series. I really feel like you set the tone and you modeled what you wanted from the rest of the system by being a part of that. I know you said that Jen did a lot of work and other people did a lot of work, but you putting yourself out there, showed your sense of humor, showed that you could, laugh at yourself. Was that your original intent to be in the videos?
so before I forget, I got to give a really big shout out to my Board of Education because they indulge me in all of my craziness. And one of the biggest things they did that I think is another seminal moment is they agreed with me that everything should be open educational resource and that it's very important we share. So, those videos aren't cheap to make, and we could have just kept them internal, but I pushed and they agreed. Let the world have them.
Well,
Yeah.
the world does have them.
So
The world is using
um,
them.
so I met this young videographer right out of college, and he said, "Well, if you can make a video about something, what would you do?" I said, one of my favorite lessons when I first started teaching was about longitude and latitude. And I do this whole thing about imagine if you could take a chainsaw and cut a globe in half.
Right.
And he said, that's wild, but why imagine? Why don't we just do it? And I said, well, I don't know, can we? He said, sure we can. So we wrote a script together. His name is Steve Interrante. Um, and that video, the longitude and latitude video, has 1.4 million views. When you look up longitude and latitude, it's one of the first videos that come up.
Wow.
And the success of that video is like, holy mackerel, we just did this for fun, to see
Sure.
if it helped kids.
Right.
How can we scale this? And the video series for the Mineola Grows, and we're modifying that webpage. We're going to re-release it probably by the end of the year, because we're going to include our full curriculum that we do that complements the videos. So the video is part of our curriculum. So we're going to give everything a full release pre-K to 12. So we believe in the work. We think it's important. We're proud of our work. So we want to share it, and we encourage people to use it. And I think that's kind of set the tone for what Mineola is about.
Yeah. Hey, so let me ask you this question, and this is a serious question. I'm laughing because you were so good. Did you take acting lessons in college? I mean, did you take theater? Because truly, the acting on there is very good. Your kids were on there; they were good.
I think every good teacher is a frustrated actor.
Yeah.
So no, I enjoy acting. I always enjoyed the theater. It's very funny. Our high school musical last year was Xanadu,
Oh.
and the director typecast me as Zeus. So I actually had to learn lines, and I did the play live, and I said, all right, I'm not doing that again. That's too much work. When you can video it, you can make mistakes, and you get a blooper reel.
But you're doing some things. You're innovative. You're courageous, and you're also unique in that you've been a superintendent for what, 13, 14 years now?
15. I just started my 15th. Yeah.
And from what I understand, the average superintendent stays in their position maybe 4 years, 5 years, maybe, if that. What has led to your longevity?
I lead a great community. It's filled with brilliant people, creative people. We're incredibly diverse for Nassau County.
Mhm.
In terms of bigger cities, not so much, but for our county, we're a diverse group, and we celebrate that diversity. And I think the community appreciates the recognition that we get for being creative in how we teach and learn.
Yeah.
And we develop goals. We work on our goals. We don't. Sometimes we swing and miss, but most of the time we care about kids. We're a small community. We probably 3,000 kids. I probably know 1,000 by name.
Yeah.
Probably 2,000 by face. It's and we love what we do. So I'm very blessed. I'm very blessed in life and in work.
And this is my final question for you. Where do you see education? Where do you see us in 10 years? Where do you see public education in 10 years? Do you see us continuing to embrace the change that's so rapidly coming towards us? Or do you think we're going to hit a point where we're going to start losing people, because we are losing people?
Well, I'm going to preface it by saying I hope I'm not right. That's
Yeah.
I think we bash our profession so much, and it's nationally. We do a disservice to the work the teachers do, and we don't hold them in high regard, and we're losing people to the profession.
Yeah.
And there's going to be a void that technology will fill, and I see it happening already. It's not preferable by any means. It'll be multiple teachers, online courses, asynchronous coursework, many of which I believe in, but not at the expense of live instruction. I
Instruction
think,
and relationships. I mean, the relationship
yeah,
is so huge. I mean, how many times do you hear about somebody saying they were successful because some teacher believed in them? And so that's huge.
we're fairly affluent county, so we pay very well. And we are now struggling to find people. Used to be able to steal from New York City. New York City has raised their salaries and their benefit package, so it's not so easy anymore. The suburbs, there's not a flight to the suburbs.
Yeah.
So but with that morbid background, technology has a place to make kids' lives easier, teachers' lives easier, parents' lives easier.
Right.
And we need to figure that out together so we can engage kids in learning. Ultimately, we want kids to love to learn.
Yep. That's the goal. Well, Mike, I really appreciate you taking the time. At the end of each one of my podcasts, I use this old African proverb that I used at my dad's funeral like 3 years ago. And it goes, "As I go, I am wearing you." And what it's about is like all the people who along my journey that I've learned from. When you see Brian Butler, you're not seeing Brian Butler, you're seeing all the people who have poured into him or who he's learned from. And so, throughout my podcast, I have had some great guests, and just being able to connect, with you and be able to write about your district and you in the book. I am now wearing Mike Nagler and Mineola. Appreciate it.
I appreciate it. I love the sentiment of that. We stand on the shoulders of those before us. So, I appreciate it. I appreciate the work you do. I appreciate you highlighting our district. We do have a lot of great people here to do great work, and I'm always proud to showcase that work.
Awesome.
So thank you.
Well, thanks so much for coming on. The book comes out next month. We'll sure to get you a copy.
All right.
And I appreciate you coming on, and thanks for being on A Conversation with Brian.
Thank you.
Subscribe to A Conversation with Brian on my YouTube channel and Spotify.